Minister, thanks very much for your kind words today and for our meeting yesterday. Maybe answering such a broad question, I will try to make some introductory remarks, on what brought me here and what I see is our common responsibility and common job, and then I will answer all other questions. So really, for me, it's a very big pleasure to be back here in Spain and in Madrid. And I will remind that your Prime Minister said in Munich, we Spaniards are far away from Russia, but we know quite well that Putin is a real threat. And that is good to hear, especially if you are like me from Lithuania, from Baltic region. And that is, I come to Spain because there is no European defense readiness without Spain. Spain has an important defense and space industry that makes impressive products and achieves great things. Spain is an European space leader. You made a decisive contribution recently to Govsatcom, and thanks to you, all member states can now enjoy sovereign satellite communication. And Spain has shown strong support to Ukraine all during the war. And I am happy about the strong military commitment of Spanish Ministry of Defense and armed forces to support Ukraine with priority defense equipment, including air defense. Now we have new possibilities to increase our support and to make it more stable and predictable. Because from April, Commission and Ukraine will start to implement the new big 60 billion euros Ukraine support loan for the defense of Ukraine. Ukrainian authorities identified their clear strategic priorities: drones, missiles, 155 millimeters extended range ammunition. The biggest challenge, missiles. 2 days ago in Brussels, I had a conversation with all the major European producers of missiles. Soon I will go on a missile tour, visiting missile producers together with the national defense ministers to discuss implementation of what I would call a special program. We want governments to urgently sell to Ukraine the needed missiles from the government stockpiles and industries to be ready to quickly produce the quantities needed to replenish stockpiles. I hope that Spain again will be an active partner in this program to assist Ukraine. So, defense really is a clear strategic priority for all of us, both in member states, in Brussels, here in Spain. There are plenty of recent developments, from finances and industries to geopolitics and transatlantic relations. I will not try to cover everything in my introduction. We will have the Q&A for that. But I want to speak with you a little bit broader, openly, about one problem which we can only solve together: Commission, government and industry. And let me shortly explain. The European Union provides massive support for industry. In the last year, Europe has created massive possibilities for our defense: 150 billion euro in safe loans, the 60 billion euro defense loan for Ukraine, 131 billion euro in the plans for next MFF for defense and space, and member states have committed to spend trillions for defense by 2035 if they will implement what they pledged to NATO. Also, we have powerful new industrial policy instrument, EDIP, our European Defence Industry Programme, with tested instruments like ASAP and EDIRPA, and new important ones like a DPCI, CIAP, the Security of Supply Regime, or Ukraine Support Instrument. And now we are at a watershed moment between the industrial policy instruments and financial possibilities which we have created and the production ramp-up we need to achieve now. I am now talking a lot to member states and ministers, and what they are saying is making me worried. They say industry is raising prices and delaying delivery dates, because industries are not ramping up their production volumes at the same speed as the finances for defense are increasing. And that is not the goal of our European support and our spending. Companies of course, operate on commercial principles. We expect nothing else. But for us as Commission, our policy is production, because this is the only way how capabilities can be built. Our purpose is peace. The profit we seek is to prevent a war. The dividend for Europe is peace. Or to use words that were written in Spain over 400 years ago by Miguel de Cervantes, who said, I quote, "Arms have as a purpose and end peace, which is the greatest good that man can desire in this life." End of quote. Defense industry is not an ordinary industry, but a resource for our defense. Our ability as Europe to deter aggression depends on the ability of our industry to meet huge demand and innovate at rapid pace. Overpriced defense products that arrive years too late will not deter Putin. That will invite Putin. And it will undermine also public support for defense investment. And Ukraine needs equipment now. And for Ukraine, delays are deadly delays. Territory lost, lives lost, freedom lost. So what Europe needs is for industry to rapidly scale up production lines and production capacity, so that they can produce at speed and scale to meet the defense needs of member states and NATO. We need industrial surge. The Ukrainians managed to increase defense production by 50 times since the beginning of the war. That should be an inspiration also for all of us. Of course, this is easier said than done. I speak a lot with industry partners. I hear, Commissioner, we want that too. We want to produce and produce in bulk. We want nothing more. They are not worried about profits. Volume goes up, unit prices go down. It is simple economics. But they are worried about risk. To produce in volume, industry first needs big orders, long-term orders from member states, and long-term industrial security, because the risks to industry are colossal. I said already, defense industry is no ordinary industry. To produce big, you first need to invest big. Take big risks before there are any returns. Whole new factories need to be built with state-of-the-art machines. Highly qualified workers need to be paid. And industry tells me, member states are not giving the security of long-term stable demand that industry needs. So we have a conundrum. That is a major threat to our defense readiness. And we are all in this together, Commission, member states and industry. I have decided to speak about this openly because we will not solve this problem by just looking at each other, waiting for somebody to make the first move. We all need to work together and create an ecosystem for long-term contracts to assure industry. And we can do it. I will talk with the governments. I said, now we need an industrial surge for the demands of Ukraine and for our own defense capabilities. But also we need to establish a long-term European policy which would create a long-term stable demand for defense products. For example, we need a policy which would create an obligation for member states to secure preservation of stocks of ammunition and other weaponry as a matter of national security and as a matter of preparedness. Also, we need to realize provisions of EDIP on the possibility of member states to establish, manage and maintain defense industrial readiness pools, which the Commission can support. And we need to remember that EDIP establishes the possibility to finance the building up and making available of reserve such manufacturing capacities of defense products, so-called ever-warm facilities. Those and similar instruments will help us to avoid or diminish the possibilities of a supply crisis, will create long-term stable demand, and will create for industry much more secure long-term visibility of demand. It will bring that additional industrial security which you need in order now to go for an industrial surge. This direction will be my priority for the nearest future. And in the discussion, I would like very much to hear your ideas about what else we can do. And I have a final sobering thought. History shows, most recently in Ukraine, that when wars come, contracts and production come. So what we are waiting for? If we will fail now, only to act when it is too late, the cost will be immense. And it will not be measured in money. That would be an immense tragedy for Europe. So let us together act now with increased defense finances, clear long-term demand, and industrial stage now to prevent war and preserve peace. Thanks a lot.
Muchas gracias, comisario. En la conferencia de seguridad de Múnich, la presidenta von der Leyen insistió en que la Unión Europea debe dar vida al artículo 47.2 del Tratado de la Unión Europea, referido a la solidaridad entre Estados miembros ante desafíos geopolíticos. ¿Cree que podría activarse esa cláusula de defensa mutua, 47.2, y en relación con el artículo 48.2 del Tratado de la Unión, cuáles serían, en su opinión, señor comisario, las principales reformas necesarias, tanto de tipo jurídico como en el plano institucional, para que la Unión pase de las declaraciones de intenciones a ser un actor militar creíble? ¿Qué papel cree usted que podría tener España en ese proceso de reforma?
Well, thanks again for a very good question and very broad. We can discuss, I don't know, till late evening. And yesterday we started to discuss some of those issues with your Foreign Affairs Minister. Very interesting discussion. So now really what we need to understand when we're talking about defense and defense readiness of Europe, we need to understand that defense readiness has three pillars. One is what I call material defense readiness, so weapons, production, finances, and so on, which we were really spending time on that during all last year. Things are moving, but as I said, there are some new challenges which we need to find the way how to meet them. Second is institutional defense readiness, how we are organizing ourselves on the European continent, and especially if we are taking into account that our transatlantic partners, according to their strategic documents, not just, to some kind of emotional, statement sometimes, but to their strategic documents, which really has very clear rational basis, they are ready to concentrate their efforts much more on mitigating Chinese rising military power and moving, closer to Indo-Pacific region and Western Hemisphere. And the third pillar is what I call political defense readiness. How to keep political will in our countries to defend ourselves and to build defense of our countries in order to deter aggression when really Russia is using all the hybrid means in order exactly to attack this political will of our people. So those are three major pillars. Now, really, when we are taking into account those three pillars, we need to see what challenges we are facing. And I will not say anything here very new. From one side, we see, as your Prime Minister said, Russian aggression really is a threat to everybody. And as our intelligence services are saying, it can come quite soon. So that demands from us really very speedy decisions and ramp up of our capabilities. From another side, Americans are saying that they will start to diminish. So that means that really we need to have quite a complex agenda on our table. From one side, we need to take care about our own capabilities. From another side, we need to look into institutional side, and that should be related with what we call building of European independence in defense. And that means also that we need to look how we shall use very important Article 42.7, which demands from member states to provide mutual assistance to another member state which is becoming victim of aggressive military attack by all means. And this is a very powerful article, we have, Daniel here, who knows much better about the treaties and language, and I am a little bit worried that he can, tell that I am wrong in my interpretation of the treaty. But this is, a powerful article, because some experts are saying that if to look procedurally, this is more effective even than NATO Article 5. Because in NATO, to initiate Article 5, you need to have a unanimous Council decision. For Article 42.7, you need simply the country to declare that it's a victim of military aggression. All others, we need to come with, assistance, mutual assistance by all means to assist that country. So President Niinistö, in his very famous report on preparedness, said this is really a very crucial article for us, but till now, we did not develop the language, what is called operationalization, how we should make this article operational. So now we are working on that. Really, we are looking how we can, implement that article with clear coordination and provision of what is needed for member states. And that could be, again, step forward in really building our institutional defense readiness. That we should be ready, whatever will come, we should be ready to use this really important article in the best way. I would remind also, since, you asked a question about article, we politicians are, how to say, if you ask question, we can speak and speak and speak, so please stop me at some time, But there is Article 42.2, which speaks about our obligation in development of our common security and defense policy to move evolutionary or progressively towards common defense. It's not very clear what does it mean, common defense. It's not very clear how to move progressively, but I'm always asking a very simple question. If not now, so then when? What else we need to face in order to start to move to, more common, more unity in our defense? You know that we have a lot of historical legacy now on how our defense is done in Europe. Since 1951, since 1952, when there was an attempt to create a common defense by Adenauer, by Monnet, by others, but that treaty which was prepared failed in French Parliament. So defense is, according to the treaties, defense is a national prerogative of each member state. Commission has only possibility to support member states and NATO with our industrial policy. But out from this national defense policy, in some way, fragmentation of our defense policies into national defense policies, we got the outcome in the industry, which is fragmentation of defense industry. And Draghi, in his famous report, was saying that this is the biggest problem for our defense industry, because there is no single market for defense industry. It's very much fragmented. And defense industry cannot use big single market of Europe to develop its own competitive advantages globally. And because of that, since our industries are losing in some way competition globally, our governments, when they spend defense money, they are going to spend the money in American markets. Draghi report was saying that it was 60% of production which we were procuring from United States, only 20% from our own industry. So now its American percentage is going a little bit down, less than 40%, but nevertheless, still we have that problem, that we are very much fragmented. Treaty is saying we need to move to common defense. Still, it's not very clear how and when we shall start to move. But I'm always saying very simple, and this is my last sentence to this answer. I'm always saying, look, let's answer a very simple question. In your opinion, if the United States would not have federal army, but would have 50 armies on the state level, 50 defense policies on the state level, and 50 defense budgets on the state level, would they be stronger militarily or not? My answer is very simple. Of course not. But because of some reasons, because of historical heritage, we're saying that we, with 27 armies, which, Joseph Borrell was perhaps the first one who was saying that some of our armies are bonsai armies. No. Nice, expensive, small, and not very, practical. So, still we're thinking that being with 27 armies, policies, and budgets, we are the strongest, in our strongest capability here in Europe. So let's think about that. I think that those discussions will start to come also.
Comisario Kubilius, si le parece bien, voy a ir presentándole las preguntas. Son muchas, ya ve cómo llegan, que me están llegando del público y las agruparé para abordar diferentes temas. Siguiendo en la Conferencia de Seguridad de Múnich, el secretario de Estado de Estados Unidos, Marcos Rubio, reafirmó el compromiso con la Alianza Transatlántica, pero condicionó esa cooperación a las prioridades definidas por Washington y a la particular visión del orden mundial que tiene el presidente Trump. ¿Qué lectura hace la Comisión Europea, y en particular usted como comisario de Defensa, de esa posición estadounidense y cómo influye, en su opinión, en la urgencia o en la viabilidad de la autonomía estratégica europea, especialmente en defensa e industria? Tania Contreras le pregunta, ¿existe margen para coordinación sin sacrificar una agenda propia de la Unión Europea? ¿Cree usted que es posible establecer en Europa un ejército europeo y una política común de defensa europea? Ingrid Naranjo le pregunta si usted se cree la sinceridad de Marco Rubio.
Well, Marco Rubio spoke very nice, historical, I would call sentimental speech, which was nice to hear. I immediately, in one of those Munich, seminars, I expressed my concern that, it would be good that Europeans would not start to relax in building of our defense independence. Just hearing really good speech of Marco Rubio, so maybe Marco Rubio removed a little bit of that emotional, level in our relationship. But it does not change, and I do not see the reasons why Americans would start to change their strategic forecast of global developments. And that, strategic forecast is very well described in recently published National Defense Strategy. We're saying very clearly, for them priority will be, because of global developments, China, mitigation of China, so it means going towards Indo-Pacific. Language about China is more calm than it was before. We need to also to think why and how. I see that Americans are forecasting that really China till, during next decades, till the end of the century, can grow into very strong, economically and geopolitical entity, and that will be new reality, and the world needs to adapt. If earlier we were hearing, that Americans, will in some way will compete with China, who is the global boss. Now I see a little bit, different approach, but definitely they will move their resources towards Indo-Pacific, and they're asking us to take care about our security here in this region. And perhaps, most convincing argument during Munich conference I got from Alex Grinkiewicz, Secure of NATO, American general, And he spoke that even before, and then that is repeated in all different analytical papers of United States strategists, that when Americans are calculating such a scenario that Russia and China can collaborate in deciding to test really the whole West, at the same time starting operations, aggressive operations, on different flanks of Euro-Asian continent, let's say so, Americans are saying for them it will be difficult to manage both conflicts at the same time. And that is why they are asking us to see the same perspective, to see the same challenge, and to take this responsibility really very, very strongly. Now, what does it mean to take responsibility? Definitely, we know that we were investing into our capabilities. We need to build them. I would say that, that last year, member states agreed with NATO on so-called capability targets, which are designed by NATO, what each member state needs to build up in terms of capabilities, in terms of number of new tanks, artillery, aircrafts, whatever, drones, and things like that. And in general, at least those numbers are, discrete. They are not announcing, but NATO Transformation Commander, Admiral Van Dier, publicly said that the new targets are 30% bigger than the previous ones. And the previous ones from 2021, since we Europeans are, lazy, they were not implemented also by 30%. So it's very simple. I graduated at some time physics, but this is first-class arithmetic. You can calculate very simply that we are at the moment at the level of 50%, what we need to have according to new capability targets of NATO in order to be ready to deter Putin. So there is a big gap what we need to do simply to develop, our capabilities. Second, if really we are seriously, taking this perspective that Americans can start to diminish, maybe without emotions, in an orderly way, their presence on the European continent, then we need to be ready to replace what now they are providing us. And for example, we are very heavily dependent on so-called strategic enablers, what Americans are providing. And strategic enablers are those, military people know very well what does it mean. They are not shooting, themselves, but without what they are giving to our militaries would not be able to shoot, because those are space intelligence data, space secure communication, like Starlink. Here we have airlift capabilities, air refueling capabilities, and all those things which really till now were provided for our militaries very much by Americans, and we shall need to replace that by our own capabilities. So it's big task, but it's it's manageable. It costs money, but those products are available. We are building now new satellite constellations for Earth observation, governmental service, for intelligence data. We are building IRIS² for secure satellite communication, like Starlink. Experts are saying that it will be better than Starlink. I am not arguing with those experts. If you are saying that that will be better than Starlink, good, I believe in that. But besides those material things, there is a question of American troops, 80,000, 100,000, which are located here on the European continent. And again, some experts are saying that they are playing a crucial strategic role. They call it backbone military force on the European continent, because this is cohesive, standing army, which has all the means to be very mobile, to move from one region of Europe to another region. And if they would start to diminish that number, for us the problem will be how to replace that. And again, experts are saying, simple Lego combination of 27, branches of our different armies once a year coming together to train will not bring that quality which now Americans are providing with their standing and cohesive army. So if we want to replace, we need to create, we call it whatever, European army or European rapid reaction force, I see that as an issue, because I do not see really clear alternatives how we can, replace that capability. So, and again, here should not be misleading some kind of thoughts, because the terminology of European army has some kind of again of some historical legacy. The first time it was introduced by Adenauer, by Monnet, back in 1950s with the Treaty on European Defence Community. And their proposal was that let's create a European army and let's abandon national armies. So I don't see such perspective now. When we're talking about, European rapid reaction force or European army of some kind of, limited size, I'm looking how to replace American resources, American troops, which now are working, hand in hand with European national military forces. So we need to keep that, the same approach. So that's about European army. But Spanish position, for me, it looks like really interesting, attractive. I think that we need not to be afraid to raise such kind of issues for our discussions, for our debates. I see another problem, that where and how we can decide on the answers to those questions. And in my view, really, there is a lack of some kind of proper platform to seek for really important decisions of such kind. Because, well, Minister knows much better, but when I am visiting council is very important, but I do not see that council is the best way to have such kind of deep, discussions, trying to find the best answers. So that is why looking into some kind of new experiences, E5 plus, formats where big countries are coming together, I suggested to bring back what was proposed by Macron and Merkel almost 10 years ago, an idea of so-called European Security Council. First of all, maybe very informally, but a little bit more formalized than E5 plus, to have the same, 5 big countries like Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Poland, maybe, UK, if we are discussing issues outside of, of European Union, if we are discussing broad European security, and then adding 3 rotational members, adding, Commission President and Council President, and to have such a platform, what Angela Merkel was also urging, in order to discuss most important issues and to prepare swift decisions. That would be, in my view, a very practical step forward, looking, for answers into those big questions.
Muchas gracias. Siguen llegando las preguntas, señor comisario. ¿Qué obstáculos ve a la colaboración de la industria europea? ¿Hacen falta campeones industriales de defensa europeos? ¿Cómo puede evitarse, le preguntan, que el aumento del gasto en defensa termine beneficiando principalmente a proveedores no europeos?
Well, definitely, I am really not against champions. And again, I can remind you Draghi report when he spoke about fragmentation and what is the consequence. And the consequence is that global champions in defense industry are not Europeans. The biggest European company, defense company, which is in, among the top global companies, is Leonardo, number 13. The first 10 are Americans and Chinese. So that's what brings some kind of very clear answer. And in order globally to compete, definitely you need to have size. Of course, then you need to look how to create competitive, environment here inside of the market, of our single market. But that is, that is another story. Champions, I think, are an important part of our attempts to be globally competitive. And I think that, defense industry really is starting to show some good consolidation initiatives. I am happy to see that. Of course, they will need to go through all the procedures and so on. But that is a good way, because that also brings much more of unity in defense. And maybe also, this unity among industrial players will push also governments to be more united, because still I see that lack of unity among political leadership, political ministers. Again, experts were warning us that when there will be more money for the governments to spend on defense, and the governments, we need to remember, the governments are the biggest source of financial resources for defense. During the next 10 years, if member states will implement the pledges which they gave to NATO, 3.5%, they will spend 6.8 trillion euros. On EU level, with the programs which we are ready to approve in next MFF, we shall have something like 60 or 70 billion euros for defense. So it means 100 times more on national level will be spent for defense. But when national governments are starting to spend big amounts of money for defense, experts are warning fragmentation will start to increase. If we shall not find, some kind of unity, forms and unity understanding, mindset change, and so on and so on. So that is why, for example, now it's very important new things which we are doing with implementation of new program EDIP is so-called, and we announced the first call for EDPCIs, European Defence Projects of Common Interest, where we are inviting member states to present pan-European initiatives on pan-European projects or regional projects in such a way, incentivizing their real collaboration and unity. And I see that, here can be perhaps the first three, those CDPCIs can be air defense shield for air defense, then missile defense shield, also third one, Eastern Flank Watch. But I would not be surprised if then will come some other projects, and I'm always urging, being here in the region, that if we have Eastern Flank Watch, why not to have whatever, Mediterranean Flank Watch or Atlantic Flank Watch, as a project, because definitely, now we see what is the threat of Russia, but definitely there are threats in all the regions, either maritime threats or undersea underwater cables threats, which again, we're waiting for any kind of joint initiative from this region. Now and definitely we're looking how to incentivize member states to spend more of their money, not only for joint procurement, which we have instruments established, the DIRPA program, but also for more of European products. And I am always saying that it's not a protectionism. European defense industry is one of the crucial defense resources. In my understanding, we have 4 defense resources which we need to take care about them. One is really weapons. We need to have weapons in advance in our stockpiles. Second, we need to have military personnel trained and ready to be mobilized. We need to have military mobility, which we are now doing a lot on that with new military mobility package. in order to move goods from one side to another side, and we need to have well-developed defense industry. In order, if the X is coming, that we have not so far away, industry which is able to maintain, to repair, to produce new things. That is what defense industry is about. And if we are not investing into our defense industry, we are not doing what we need to do. I love, American production, really. Still they are producing something very good, which we are not able to produce. And perhaps we shall procure that production. Still we are keeping, 40% of American production is in our procurement portfolios. Americans are procuring only 1% from Europe, despite the fact that our industries really are very good technologically. But Americans are still, complaining that we are, bad guys. We are badly behaving with American industry. I'm saying, look, let's compare the numbers. And second problem, which I am openly saying to American administration, is so-called ITAR problem. Industrials know what does it mean. ITAR regulation is regulation of American export, whatever, things, which creates such a condition that if you are buying American weapons, or in your weapons there are American components, American administration keeps what we call kill switch in their hands. They can decide that they are not allowing you to use your weapon, which you bought from them, whatever, to attack, for example, target somewhere in Russian territory. So, to invest into the weapons, which then you are not able to use, it's not the most smart decision. And I am saying to Americans very openly that, look, this is your problem. Because I see when I'm meeting with European industries, especially smaller, agile startups and mid-caps who are really, have very ambitious plans, I see how they are promoting their products to European governments. And in their advertisement paper, they are showing all the technical details, what they are ready to produce. And at the end, there is one sentence. No Chinese, no Russian, no ITAR components. And they are winning,
Muchas gracias, comisario. Javier Escribano, de Escribano Mechanical and Engineering, dice, muchas empresas europeas estamos realizando importantes inversiones propias para aumentar nuestras capacidades productivas. A la luz de las lecciones aprendidas en Ucrania, ¿cómo prevé la Comisión dar visibilidad y estabilidad de demanda a la industria para que estas inversiones industriales a largo plazo puedan sostenerse y escalarse dentro de Europa?
Very good question. Thanks a lot, And I was trying to talk about that, that on our side is this, responsibility to show to the industry that really here will be stable, high, level demand. And very, very informative was my meeting with missile producers just on Wednesday, perhaps, before we were flying here, when we talked about, I announced that we shall go for missile tour, really, first of all, looking for what is needed for Ukraine. You know that Ukrainian needs in missiles, air defense missiles and other missiles is very, very crucial. And all those, industries, without exception, they were telling, we are increasing our, production capacity, sometimes quite impressively, but all of them, they were ending their presentation saying, please give us some kind of assurance that this is not, from your side. It's not one, moment, search of activity, spending money, and then, for example, if peace will come, you will forget about any kind of, investment. And what industries will do? with their expanded production capacity. So this is really what we need to approach. Definitely, I absolutely sure that with all our, policy, strategic agenda, what we see, what we need to do, and how geopolitics is changing, and what tasks are in front of us, and what money we are now raising. It can look like that we really are giving all those long-term guarantees, but perhaps it's not enough. That is why I just mentioned several ideas, which still is my ideas, which I will work together with my cabinet and our services, and then I hope that we shall manage to agree also with the council, with the governments. There are several instruments which are known. Americans are using that exactly to create guarantees for industries on long-term demand. One is national reserves, reserves of ammunition, reserves of missiles. I don't know, for the time being, we shall try to get more information. What is with the reserves now in Europe? But I read one interesting think tanker's paper about European defense with less of America, and where they mentioned that think tank, really important and well-known think tank, international think tank, CSIS, Center of Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. They said that they made some kind of war game simulation, real war in between of China and the United States. And the outcome, in 2 days, Americans are out of all the missiles which they had before, with their stocks. Their stocks are empty. 2 days. So definitely we need to learn lessons, and we need to build stocks. Real stocks, I don't know. We need to discuss with military people, for how many days of the war, 30 days, 60 days, whatever. But if we are building stocks of gas, and we are demanding from member states to declare that they, have full stocks of, full reserves of gas each autumn, not to do the same with, stocks for defense would be quite a mistake. So this is one thing which I see. Really, we can move into that, and also to create some kind of clear long-term demand for the industry. Second is what is also written down in EDIP, and what I'm looking also how to develop that idea and to make it more understandable and to start to look into implementation. So-called defense readiness solidarity pool or something like that. That member states, maybe even Commission, can participate to procure in advance, some really ammunition or missiles and so on, and to keep them into some kind of joint reserves. And if, day X is coming, then those who need some of that, weaponry they can take, land, or buy from that resource. Again, in order to create some kind of long-term demand for the industry by the governments, which will have obligation to build some kind of those assets. And the last point, which I think also we shall need to move, and EDIP is speaking about that, is creation of the contracts, of so-called contracts on ever-warm facilities. That, what does it mean? It means that governments need to go, in order, again, to answer the challenge of preparedness. Governments need to find a way how to be ready for day X, when immediate surge of military production will be needed. Now it's not so much needed. But if day X is coming, suddenly you need to start to produce millions of drones, ammunition, and so on and so on. And one way, what is known in other countries and what we speak in EDIP, is to have contracts on so-called ever-warm production facilities. It means you can leave those production capabilities not used at the moment, but you are having, contract from the government. Government is paying that you are ready to switch that production, facility immediately into the search of military production. So that could be also some kind of longer-term guarantee. So that's about how we can really bring this security for your developments in terms of our industrial policy and our industrial long-term instruments.
Comisario, ante el estancamiento del programa FCAS, el consejero delegado de Airbus, Guillaume Faugy, acaba de plantear que su compañía estaría dispuesta, si lo solicitan los gobiernos involucrados, España, Alemania y Francia, a respaldar una solución con 2 cazas y se comprometería a desempeñar el papel de líder en ese esquema reorganizado. ¿Qué valoración hace usted de esta propuesta a la que Airbus cree que podría atraer a nuevos socios europeos? ¿Entiende que todavía hay alguna forma de salvar el FCAS, cuyo coordinador es Indra?
Well, we were talking yesterday with the minister, and really this is a sad news how things went with so-called FCAS. Well, I can just say a few words. Perhaps we need to learn the lessons, and the lesson is that in defense, for some reasons, for historical legacy reasons, for the reasons of fragmentation, for the reasons that governments are taking care very much about their national defense industry, which is quite natural. But we are so weak in developing successful pan-European defense projects that I cannot even remind myself any kind of success story. When in space, we have quite significant success stories, like Galileo, like Copernicus, now Iris Square, I hope will be, and others will come. So something in defense is different from space. So it shows really, space for me shows that, well, we are normal people, we're able to agree if we see the common, goal, common understanding, we can agree, everybody, can participate, and then we have the project. In defense, still, this is, we're at the first stage, and sometimes we are really not able to move ahead. With that voluntarily attempts that voluntarily several countries are coming. They have good initiative to develop, FCAS, but then it appears that this voluntarism is not enough, to really to have a success. My first reaction is that maybe we could use for development of such kind of projects the new instruments which we have in EDIP, so-called European Defence Projects of Common Interest. I cannot, assure you that this is exactly where, for example, new FCAS can be, proposed, but I see in some way difference here, because if you are applying for European project for common interest, for example, in development of new European air fighter, FCAS, then if you will be successful and your EDPCI will be approved, it means that you will have approval of the Council. That means that you are at that level. So it's nice, you can be proud, but also you are becoming much more responsible. Because it's not anymore something like voluntarily, beginning is voluntary, but then you are getting this status, and you have some kind of much bigger responsibility. Second, this status also would give you possibility to have access to European funds. And if you are getting funds, definitely, again, Commission will ask, so, what are you delivering? Why are you not delivering what you promised? So a little bit of that, how to say, consolidation of the structure, of institutional approach, maybe could be exactly some kind of this additional instrument which would allow us to overcome this permanent European problem that in defense we cannot develop successful pan-European projects.
Luis Fournel, de OESIA, dice que el entorno estratégico de Europa se está deteriorando más rápido que la generación de capacidades militares para garantizar la estabilidad industrial y mantener la soberanía tecnológica. Y le pregunta a Luis cuál considera usted que es la brecha de capacidades más urgente, ya sea una preparación operativa, municiones, producción industrial, infraestructuras espaciales. ¿Qué medida práctica debería aplicar la Unión Europea de inmediato para cerrar esa brecha en los próximos 12 o 18 meses?
Well, definitely, after 30 years, or somebody is saying after, whatever, 80 years of our understanding that in Europe security is guaranteed by Americans, and that can continue forever. Now for us it's quite a big change. And sometimes I'm saying that the biggest problem and the biggest challenge is change in mindset, not in how we are producing. If mindset will start to be, adapted to these new challenges, then things will start to move more quickly. So now on the industrial side, what really we see as a challenge, first of all, definitely we need to learn lessons from Ukraine. Industrial lessons, production lessons, innovation lessons. And we really need to prepare ourselves for the wars of tomorrow, not for the wars what our parents have seen during Second World War, or what we see still in nice Hollywood movies. The war in Ukraine is totally different. And to expect that, we shall fight a different war, we shall have air superiority and so on, I'm not so sure that this is an answer to that challenge. Because the war itself can be very different itself. And I'm always wondering, what will happen if Putin will start to provoke not with 20 drones like he did, with Poland, but, for example, sending 200 drones. What will be our answer? And things like that. So this is one thing. Second, in order to prepare for wars of tomorrow, we need deep transformation. Transformation in the industries, way past last year, so-called communication on defense industry transformation, with a lot of proposals how we can speed up our learning process from Ukraine. We create a special platform, Brave Tech EU, where our startups can work together. Some other instruments will come. But I was always saying that, look, here when we are talking about industry, we are talking about transformation of supply. But we are not talking about transformation of demand, which is crucial from my point of view. And what does it mean? That first of all, also, in our governments, in our military leadership, there needs to be clear understanding what we are preparing for. I don't know, maybe I'm not following each country very precisely, but last year I saw only British strategic review of their military doctrine, very interesting paper, where I saw clear evidence that really Brits are learning from Ukraine on a very simple way. In Ukraine, drones now are destroying 80% of all the targets. Brits put very, simple strategy with three numbers: 40, 40, 20. 40% of targets they are planning to hit with light kamikaze-type drones, 40%, of targets with heavy drones, whatever they're called, and 20% with classical heavy, artillery, tanks, and so on. So numbers are very similar to Ukrainian numbers. So that is what I see as very important. Second, again, I am speaking about Ukrainian, lessons, and I am going again this, Sunday. I'm going back to Ukraine. When you are looking into how Ukrainians managed to create this, what we call drone wall, drone defense, not everybody understood, so now we are using drone defense initiative. But what you can see in Kiev you can see that production of drone, engineers, producers, and so on, is a small part of what you need to have. Ukrainians created the whole ecosystem of drone army, where in the same building, in one room you see producers of the drones, next room engineers and innovators, next room operators working on the front line, very clear digital statistics, and immediately they know if their drones are starting to fail, because Russians are starting to jam, they got that information very, very quickly. They are changing something in the drone, and again they are sending those drones to the front line. Operators are working under, I would call, for me it was very strange, bonus system, a little bit, I was calling macabre, because each operator, when he hits the target, he got bonus points. It comes from game industry. But that creates competition among drone operators. That creates competition among drone companies. And really, it's very clear and visible how it brings really much better results, for Ukrainian side. And of course, then all that ecosystem ends with totally different procurement system. We are not ready to, for time being, to do what Ukrainians are able to do. So that's what I see as really what is really what we need to do. And to do that very, very quickly, that is why, again, I repeat, we are moving ahead with different projects. And for example, I see also very big significance that in EDIP we have the whole chapter on integration of Ukrainian defense industry with our industry. EDPCIs, which we are developing, for example, on drone initiative or Eastern Flank Watch, Ukrainians can be an equal part of our projects. So because I see that in some cases, development of our defense projects would benefit very much if they would be done together with Ukraine. Because this is the way how we can learn a lot of those, what I call soft things.
Voy a agrupar tres últimas preguntas, señor comisario. Ivona Perribay, de SAPA, quiere remarcar la importancia de programas europeos como Marte, excelente en I+D y en creación de ecosistema de defensa europea. Le pregunta si estos programas se orientarán más hacia conseguir desarrollo e industrialización europea. Alejandra Kindelan, la presidenta de la Asociación Europea de Banca, le pregunta cómo ve el papel del sector bancario europeo en la agenda que usted está describiendo y, finalmente, ¿qué diría a los que defienden un escudo nuclear europeo a partir de compartir las capacidades de Francia?
Well, on R&D, definitely, defense very much depends on good R&D. And we have European Defense Fund, which is covering the needs for our militaries. Of course, there are a lot of national initiatives also. Now, in the next MFF, we are increasing 5 times defense spending. So it means that also we can expect that European Defence Fund will have an increased funding. Let's look for that. Of course, also we need to look again if to compare how we are working with our funds and grants for research and development. So in average, it takes almost 2 years. If you apply for a grant, after 2 years, we're giving you a grant. When we were trying to explain to Ukrainians, they said, well, it's impossible. You know. So, but that's, you know, how to say, it demands simplification, of course. We are moving also with simplification agenda. We passed very ambitious simplification omnibus in Commission, but I'm joking that we need also to have simplification of simplification. Because in the Council, in the Parliament, still long debates. I would be happy if, you know, on 1 year anniversary of our proposal, we shall have something substantial on that. So that's still, you know, how we are working. It would be good to change. Now we also are preparing some new, much more rapid reaction instruments, like Agile. We shall come out with that perhaps in March, with regulation. Again, with possibility for industries to get, innovative industries, to get grants for their development, for industrialization very quickly, a limited amount of funds, but nevertheless, you know, that could allow really to move ahead. Of course, each project has a risk element, but we need to adapt also to become more risk accepting. That, you know, not all the ideas can be materialized in industrial projects, but that's what we need to do. Banking sector, you know, there is some progress. We were from the very beginning really pushing very much banking sector to abandon this, you know, approach that defense is something dirty, almost like gambling, or I don't know, you know, and that's they are not, you know, investing because that can damage their reputation, and that was even with EIB, European Investment Bank. So we really pushed reforms in that perception, and EIB really is in some way standard setter. So EIB changed their language. It took some time. For me, it was again a little bit strange, because the governments were asking, you know, that we should push EIB for change, but EIB governing board is, you know, finance ministers of each country. So they asked us to push them in order to change that regulation. So now, really, we are working with EIB, and I hope that also banks are becoming much more open to investment into defense. And I remember very well one of those roundtables which we had last year with the banks, when still, you know, we were speaking a lot about how important it is for banks to be much more open, that ECG criteria is not against defense. And, well, some banks were saying, well, we cannot invest because, you know, people will not understand, and so on and so on. And one Spanish bank, I will not promote, but big bank, said, if we will not invest into defense in Spain, people will not understand us. So that was very, very strong message, you know, totally opposite. Now, on nuclear shield, I am really, Commission, we are not jumping into that discussion. This is for member states, how they will discuss and how they will find what is needed. At least I hear from Americans that they are ready to keep nuclear umbrella for Europe, that we should take care about conventional defense. For me, it's quite a clear assurance. Definitely, if we would like to start develop now nuclear umbrella, it will cost a lot of money additionally, and I'm not so sure that really it would not, that we will be able at the same time to develop our conventional capabilities and nuclear capabilities. And the last point, I am always saying, look, let's learn first of all how in a more united, more jointly approach we can develop European conventional defense capabilities. Let's learn the lessons, Why, let's show that we are not only failing with FCAS, that we can build some kind of FCAS and so on, and only after that we can start to look into much more complicated issue of nuclear defense, which will demand much more sophisticated, approach of unity, governance, and things like that. So that's why I'm not jumping into that discussion, because in my view, it's a little bit, turns our attention from really what we need to do now from conventional defense capabilities.
Señor comisario, pido disculpas a todos los que han hecho preguntas y no puedo trasladarlas por falta de tiempo. Le voy a dar un último turno para que usted lance los mensajes finales que quiera. Pero antes, permítame que le agradezca su participación y la de la señora ministra de Defensa, la señora Robles, en nombre de Escribano, General Dynamics, Indra, OESIA y SAPA, y en el nombre también, por supuesto, de Nueva Economía Forum. Su último turno.
Oh, my final vote is thanks a lot, as always. Really, thanks a lot for this conversation. I think that really they are very much needed. And I enjoyed this one, so it means that really I would be happy to come back. And from the very beginning of my mandate, I was repeating everywhere that in defense we need what I call Big Bang. It's not enough of incremental, development. We need Big Bang on finances, on production. So we did something last year on financial Big Bang. Now we need, production Big Bang. But one, I see this, much broader perspective. Americans shifting. We need to take care about our management on the European continent. How we shall build European pillar of NATO and a lot of other things. How we can be much more effective with pan-European industrial projects. I'm saying, well, now we need intellectual Big Bang in defense. And this, breakfast was very, 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 very strong, intellectual breakfast on that topic. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot very much.
Muchas gracias. Le esperamos de nuevo a mediados de marzo en el Fórum Europa en Bruselas. Están ustedes también invitados. Muchas gracias de nuevo, comisario.